They said no black pilot could handle America's heaviest fighter until he survived 200 direct hits. The impossible dream. The year was 1943, and Captain Isaiah Prophet Washington stood before the P-47 Thunderbolt for the first time, his reflection barely visible in the polished aluminum skin of America's heaviest fighter aircraft. At 17,500 pounds fully loaded, the Thunderbolt was a flying fortress that white commanders insisted was too complex for Negro pilots to master. "You sure about this, Prophet?" Lieutenant Marcus Cole asked, adjusting his leather flight jacket against the bitter cold of the English airfield. The two men had been inseparable since their days at Tuskegee, where they'd proven themselves against every obstacle the Army Air Forces threw at them. Isaiah traced his fingers along the aircraft's massive Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine, cowling. "Remember what my grandmother used to tell me. The Lord doesn't call the qualified, Marcus. He qualifies the called." His dark eyes reflected the gray English sky. "This right here, this is my calling." Behind them, the 302nd Fighter Group's hangar buzzed with activity. 50 black pilots, mechanics and ground crew worked in perfect synchrony, their movements a silent rebellion against every stereotype, every slur, every closed door they'd faced. They were the Tuskegee Airmen, but soon they'd be known by another name, the Red Tails, for the distinctive crimson paint on their aircraft tails. Colonel Benjamin Davis, Jr., the unit's commanding officer, approached with purpose in his stride. "Washington, Cole, my office." Now, the office was sparse, a desk, 3 chairs and a map of Europe covered in red pins marking Luftwaffe positions. Davis didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Gentlemen, I won't sugarcoat this. Command is assigning us to bomber escort duty using P-47s. They're expecting us to fail." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "The life expectancy for a bomber escort pilot is currently 6 missions. How many are they giving us?" Isaiah asked. 50. Davis's jaw tightened. "They want to see if your kind can handle the strain." Marcus slammed his fist on the desk. "Every mission is a test. Every flight, a trial. When do we stop being experiments? When we survive," Isaiah said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of generations. "When we prove what we've always known, that courage doesn't come in colors." Davis studied Isaiah for a long moment. "There's something else. Intelligence reports suggest the Luftwaffe is deploying a new tactic over Berlin. They're concentrating fighters in wolf packs, hitting individual aircraft with overwhelming firepower. They've dubbed it the Hammer. Then will be the anvil they break against," Isaiah replied. "If you believe courage has no color, hit that like button and let me know you're standing with these heroes." 3 weeks later, Isaiah found himself at 25,000 feet over Germany, leading a flight of 4 P-47s escorting a formation of B-17 flying fortresses to Berlin. His wingman was Marcus, with Lieutenants James Preacher Williams and Robert St. Anderson covering their six. The radio crackled. "Red Tail Leader, this is Stronghold Actual. Bandits, 12 o'clock high. Angels, count 20+ Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs inbound." Isaiah's hands tightened on the control stick. Through his canopy he spotted them. Black specks diving out of the sun, their cannon tracers already lancing through the air toward the bomber formation. "Red Tail Squadron, this is Prophet. Break by elements. Marcus, you're with me. Preacher Saint, protect those bombers. Remember your training. Remember who you are." The P-47 roared as Isaiah pushed the throttle forward, the massive radial engine's 2,000 horsepower pressing him back into his seat. The Thunderbolt wasn't graceful like the P-51 Mustang, but it was tough, built like a flying tank. The first German fighter came screaming down, its yellow nose marking it as an experienced Luftwaffe ace. Isaiah waited, counting seconds, watching the convergence of their flight path. His grandmother's voice echoed in his mind. "Faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase." He pulled the trigger. 850 caliber machine guns roared to life, sending 100 rounds per second downrange. The Messerschmitt Bf-109 disintegrated in a ball of fire, but Isaiah had no time to celebrate. 2 more were on his tail, their 20mm cannons stitching the sky around him. "Prophet, break left," Marcus's voice screamed through the radio. Isaiah yanked the stick, the G-forces compressing his chest. graying his vision. Cannon shells punched through his right wing, tearing metal like paper. Warning lights illuminated his instrument panel like a Christmas tree. Hydraulic fluid sprayed across his canopy, obscuring his vision. "I'm hit, I'm hit," he called out, fighting to keep the damaged aircraft level. "Stay with me, brother." Marcus positioned his P-47 between Isaiah and the pursuing Germans. Taking fire meant for his friend. "You ain't dying today, not on my watch." The sky became a nightmare of tracers, explosions and desperate maneuvering. Isaiah's aircraft shuddered with each impact. 10 hits, 20, 50. Metal fragments peppered his fuselage. His oil pressure was dropping, engine temperature climbing into the through the chaos. Isaiah spotted a German FUB-190 lining up on a crippled B-17, its crew desperately trying to maintain formation. The bomber's tail gunner was silent, either dead or wounded. The fortress was defenseless. Isaiah had a choice: turn for home with his dying aircraft, or make one more pass. He thought of the 10 men in that B-17, 10 fathers, sons, brothers, 10 American lives. "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death," he whispered, reciting Psalm 23, "I will fear no evil." He pushed the Thunderbolt into a near-vertical dive, the overstressed airframe screaming in protest. More impact: 70 hits, 80, 90. His canopy cracked. The control stick fought him like a living thing. 100 hits. The German pilot never saw him coming. Isaiah's remaining guns sent the FUB-190 spinning toward the earth in flames. "Red Tail leader, status." Colonel Davis's voice cut through the radio static. Isaiah tried to respond, but his radio was dead. His engine was failing. Smoke filled the cockpit. By every measure, his aircraft should have fallen from the sky. But the P-47 Thunderbolt and its pilot refused to die. This story gets even more intense. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. You won't believe how he makes it back. Isaiah was alone now, separated from his squadron in the chaos of combat, nursing a dying aircraft across 400 miles of enemy territory. The Thunderbolt had taken hundreding hits, cannon shells, machine gun rounds, and shrapnel had turned the fighter into a flying city. Engineers would later call it a miracle that the aircraft remained airborne. Isaiah called it something else: divine appointment. His compass was shattered. Navigation instruments flickered and died. Fuel was hemorrhaging from ruptured tanks, leaving a trail of vapor in his wake like breadcrumbs for German fighters to follow. The engine produced more smoke than thrust, cylinders misfiring in a staccato rhythm that vibrated through his entire body. Below, the German countryside rolled past, fields, villages and roads crawling with Wehrmacht convoys. He was too low to bail out, too high to glide. Every second in the air was borrowed time. His mind drifted to a conversation with his grandmother the night before he shipped out to England. She'd placed her weathered hands on his face and said, "Isaiah, when you're up there in that metal bird, remember the same God who kept Daniel safe in the lion's den is watching over you. But sometimes, baby, God doesn't remove the lions, sometimes he gives you the strength to walk among them." A flash of movement caught his eye, 3 Messerschmitt Bf-109s, climbing to intercept him. They'd spotted the wounded Thunderbolt and smelled blood in the water. Isaiah's weapons were jammed, ammunition expended, hydraulics failing. He had nothing left but his wits and a half-dead airplane that should have been a coffin. The lead German pilot pulled alongside, close enough that Isaiah could see his face. A young man, maybe 22, with blonde hair and the swagger of someone who'd never lost. The German waved, a mock salute, then pointed downward. The message was clear: land and surrender or die. Isaiah shook his head. The German shrugged and dropped back, positioning for the killing shot. Isaiah's hand moved to the throttle. The engine was overheating, oil pressure nearly zero. Pushing it harder would almost certainly cause catastrophic failure, but almost certainly wasn't definitely. "Lord," he prayed, "I know I'm asking a lot here, but if you could see fit to give this old bird one more minute of life, I'd be mighty grateful." He firewalled the throttle. The R2800 engine bellowed like an angry god, every damaged component screaming in metallic agony. The Thunderbolt lurched forward with unexpected acceleration. Just as the German opened fire, cannon shells passed through empty air where Isaiah's cockpit had been a heartbeat before. The sudden burst of speed caught all 3 Messerschmitts off guard. Isaiah dove for the deck, dropping to treetop level, weaving between church spires and hills. The Germans followed, but the P-47's legendary durability became its salvation. Where their lighter fighters had to pull up to avoid obstacles, Isaiah bowled straight through, his massive fighter clipping branches and scraping rooftops. Another 50 hits, 50 total. His left aileron tore away. The rudder was Swiss cheese. The canopy was gone, ripped off by a tree strike, exposing him to 200 km winds that tore at his flight suit and froze his exposed skin. But he was still flying. The Germans broke off pursuit as Isaiah crossed into Allied-held territory, their ammunition exhausted. Unwilling to venture into British airspace, Isaiah allowed himself one ragged breath of relief before reality set in. He still had to land. The airfield appeared through the smoke and haze like a mirage, the familiar sight of home, but his landing gear was damaged, hydraulics gone. He'd have to belly land, a dangerous proposition even in a pristine aircraft. In his shredded Thunderbolt it would be like trying to land a bull. The tower's voice crackled through his damaged radio. Unknown aircraft, you are cleared for emergency landing. Runway 27. Crash crews standing by. Isaiah lined up his approach, fighting the unresponsive controls with every ounce of strength. The Thunderbolt wanted to roll, to dive, to do anything but fly straight. 200 hits now. Pieces of airframe were actively falling off as he descended. The runway rushed up to meet him. Isaiah pulled back on the stick, bleeding off speed, trading altitude for control. The impact came like a car crash, metal shrieking, sparks flying, the aircraft sliding 600 feet down the runway in a shower of debris before finally grinding to a halt. Emergency crews swarmed the wreckage. Isaiah sat in the cockpit, hands still locked on the control stick, unable to move, unable to process that he was alive. Marcus was the first to reach him, tears streaming down his face. "You crazy beautiful fool," he sobbed, helping Isaiah from the cockpit. "You crazy beautiful fool." Isaiah's legs gave out and Marcus caught him. Behind them, mechanics and pilots gathered around the remains of the P-47, counting impact holes in stunned silence. 207 direct hits, and one man, still breathing. Drop a comment below. What would you do in Isaiah's situation? Would you have kept fighting or turned back? The photograph went viral before viral was a word. Isaiah Washington, standing beside his bullet-riddled P-47 Thunderbolt, became the image that couldn't be ignored. 207 hits. Life magazine ran it on the cover. Newspapers across America reprinted it. Even Stars and Stripes, the military's own publication, couldn't bury the story. The narrative that black pilots couldn't handle America's heaviest fighter died that day, killed by the same bullets that failed to kill Isaiah Washington. Colonel Davis summoned Isaiah to his office 3 days later. Isaiah still moved stiffly, bruised ribs and frostbite reminding him of his ordeal with every step. Inside he found not just Davis, but Major General James Doolittle, commander of the 8th Air Force, and a civilian he didn't recognize. "Captain Washington," Doolittle began, his voice respectful in a way Isaiah had never heard from a white senior officer. "I've been flying since. I've seen aces, heroes and legends. What you did up there." He paused, searching for words. "The engineering team estimates your aircraft should have broken apart at hit number 50. They have no scientific explanation for how you flew it home." "With respect, sir," Isaiah replied, "I do." "Faith doesn't require scientific explanation." The civilian stepped forward, introducing himself as a reporter from the New York Times. "Captain, the American public is hungry for this story. A hero who defied not just the enemy, but the prejudice of his own country. Will you talk to me?" Isaiah glanced at Davis, who nodded slightly. "I'll talk," Isaiah said slowly, "but not about me. Tell them about Marcus Cole, who took fire to save my life. Tell them about Preacher Williams and Saint Anderson, who kept those bombers safe while I was fighting for my life. Tell them about the mechanics who kept our planes flying with inferior parts and minimal support. Tell them about every black man in this unit who proves every single day that excellence has no color. The public wants a hero," the reporter pressed. "Then give them 10. Isaiah shot back. "Give them 50. Give them the 322nd Fighter Group, the unit that never lost a bomber to enemy fighters. That's the real story. One man surviving is chance. 50 men excelling despite a system designed to break them. That's revolution." Over the following months, the Red Tails flew mission after mission, building a reputation that transcended race. Bomber crews requested them by name. White pilots who'd once refused to fly with Negroes now sought their protection. The impossible had become undeniable, but Isaiah knew the war wasn't over, not the one in Europe, and not the one at home. 6 months after his miraculous survival, Isaiah found himself back in Alabama, giving a speech at a newly integrated high school. The auditorium was packed, black families on one side, white families on the other, an invisible line down the middle that might as well have been a canyon. A young black boy, maybe 12 years old, raised his hand. "Captain Washington, sir, they say you're a hero, but when you came home, did it change anything? Are we free now?" The room fell silent. Every eye turned to Isaiah. He thought carefully before answering. "Son, freedom isn't something someone gives you, it's something you take every single day with every choice you make. When they told me I couldn't fly, I flew. When they said the plane was too complex, I mastered it. When 200 bullets tried to bring me down, I refused to fall." He paused, looking at both sides of the divided auditorium. "But I didn't do it alone, I did it because Marcus had because preacher and saint held the line, because mechanics I'll never know kept my engine running one more minute, because my grandmother taught me that faith and action are two wings of the same bird." Isaiah stepped off the stage, walking down the center aisle, that invisible dividing line. "The real question isn't whether I'm a hero, it's whether you'll have the courage to cross lines that shouldn't exist, to see people for who they are, not what they look like, to judge a pilot by how he flies, not the color of his skin." He stopped at the middle of the auditorium, and extended his hand. A white boy no older than 14 stared at it for a long moment. The entire room held its breath. The boy stood and shook Isaiah's hand, then another, and another. Black and white, young and old, crossing that invisible line until it ceased to exist. Years later, when the Air Force was officially integrated in when the Tuskegee Airmen received the Congressional Gold Medal in 2007, he was there too, an old man now, surrounded by the few surviving members of the 332nd. A young reporter, black like him, asked the question, "Captain Washington, looking back, what moment defined your legacy?" Isaiah smiled, thinking of that shattered P-47, of 207 bullet holes, of the impossible journey home. "Not the survival, son. Anyone can survive with enough luck. The legacy is what you do after. Do you use your survival to build bridges or walls? Do you hoard your miracle or multiply it?" He gestured to the crowd of young airmen, every color, every background, standing together. "I survived so these young people could fly without fighting the battles we fought. Every barrier they don't face is a bullet hole patched. Every door opened is a wound healed." The reporter pressed, "But don't you want credit, recognition for what you endured?" "Credit?" Isaiah chuckled. "Son, I borrowed that plane, borrowed that time, borrowed every breath in that cockpit from the same God who makes the sun shine on everyone. You can't take credit for grace, you can only pass it on." As the ceremony concluded, Isaiah stood before a restored P-47 Thunderbolt, painted with the distinctive red tail of the 332nd. Beside it, a plaque read, "Captain Isaiah Prophet Washington, 207 hits, 0 surrender." But Isaiah knew the real count was different. It wasn't 207 hits, it was every obstacle overcome, every stereotype shattered, every door opened for those who came after. The hits kept coming. Racism, inequality, injustice, but like that P-47, he refused to fall. Marcus, now elderly like him, hobbled over with a cane, still thinking about that day. "Prophet, every day," Isaiah admitted. "Still can't explain how we made it home." Marcus grinned. "Maybe it's like your grandmother said, some things aren't meant to be explained, some things are meant to be believed." They stood together in silence, two old warriors who'd fought wars on multiple fronts, as young pilots, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, walked past in the unity they'd bled to create. "You know what the craziest part is?" Isaiah said finally. "They said no black pilot could handle America's heaviest fighter." They were right. Marcus shot him a confused look. Isaiah's eyes twinkled. "It wasn't about handling it, it was about becoming one with it. That plane and I, we weren't two separate things that day. We were one will, one purpose, one refusal to accept the impossible." He placed his hand on the restored P-47's fuselage, feeling the cold metal under his palm. This bird didn't just survive 207 hits, it survived centuries of being told it couldn't fly, shouldn't fly, would never fly, and when it finally got its chance, He smiled. It flew higher than anyone thought possible. The sun set over the airfield, casting long shadows that eventually merged into one, erasing the lines that had once divided them. And in that golden light, the old pilot and his wingman walked toward home, their shadows unified, their legacy secure. This is the story they don't teach in school. If this moved you, subscribe to this channel to hear more untold stories of courage and resistance. Hit that notification bell. These heroes deserve to be remembered. The Tuskegee Airmen flew over 15,000 sorties during World War II, destroyed 261 enemy aircraft, and earned 50 distinguished flying crosses. More importantly, they shattered the myth that black Americans couldn't serve as military pilots, paving the way for the integration of the U.S. Armed Forces. Captain Isaiah Prophet Washington is a fictional composite character, inspired by the real heroes of the 332nd, but the courage, sacrifice, and excellence he represents are entirely real. The P-47 Thunderbolts, flown by the Red Tails, did indeed survive incredible damage, a testament both to American engineering and the extraordinary skill of the pilot. The fight they fought for respect, recognition, and equality continues today. Their legacy challenges us to ask, what impossible flights are we avoiding? What barriers are we accepting that shouldn't exist? What lines are we afraid to cross? As Isaiah's grandmother taught him, and as he proved at 25,000 feet over Germany, the Lord doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the call. Adapted from 1 Corinthians 1:27, but God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. The question isn't whether we can survive 207 hits, it's whether we'll keep flying when the first bullet strikes. It's whether we'll extend our hand across dividing lines. It's whether we'll use our survival to lift others. That's the true measure of heroism. That's the legacy worth leaving. And that's a story worth remembering.